Here we go. We're going to be on live stream on YouTube in just 30 seconds, okay?
Oh, God.
Here we go. We're going to be on live stream on YouTube in just 30 seconds, okay?
Okay.
Can you see it? Okay, here we go. Here we go. We're going to be on live stream on YouTube in just 30 seconds, okay?
Your voice has lag. I don't know
Can you see it? Okay, here we go. Go on, Ardalan, you need to start the interview. We're on YouTube now. Hello, everybody.
This is streaming. You know, lower my internet speed.
Start the interview. We're on YouTube now. Hello, everybody.
This is streaming. Can you stop the streaming, please? Because clearly, yeah. Emmy, can you please stop the recording on YouTube, because it's definitely affecting on my quality.
Right, I've stopped that because it wasn't working.
Yeah. That's better. Okay, we could, you know.
We're still live on YouTube, it says.
Okay, so that's better. You have my, am I clear? Sound on voice, sound voice, video, everything. So is it okay? Everything?
Go.
Okay. So let's do it. I'm Ardalan, the Chief Secretary of Mental Health Supporters Association of University of Pajner and student of counseling, and I'm talking to you from Iran. Yeah, and I know you're familiar with our country because I've known from one of your lectures that you've been invited to Tehran, and unfortunately you haven't been able to come to our soil because of your recent travel to Israel, I think. This is so unfortunate, and we're so looking forward to see you face to face in Iran.
I did give an online talk at a conference in Iran, though, instead.
Really?
Yes,
I didn't know about that.
Yes.
I didn't know about that. How was it? How did it go?
Yes, that went very well. There were a lot of people there. Yes.
Yeah, glad to hear it. Before we start, I wanted to say Robert Niemeyer, if I pronounce him correctly, sent his regards, and
good.
I had an interview with him about a month ago, which was so great. And before we started, I wanted to introduce the audience the books from Emmy, which translated to Persian. One of them is Psychotherapy and Quest for Happiness, translated by Dr. Amartya Kiani, which is one. The other one, which is my favorite books, is Existential Counseling and Psychotherapy in Practice, translated by Dr. Amartya Kiani. And there's another book which Emmy forwarded on it, which is When Death Entered the Therapeutic Space, which is forwarded by you. It's a great book. I recommend it so much to you to read it. After we start about the topic, which is my life after coronavirus, can you introduce yourself so we can know your work, know your...
Yes, so my name is Emmy van Deurzen, and I'm an existential psychotherapist. And I have worked with people on their crises and emotional difficulties for nearly 50 years. First in France and then in the United Kingdom. And I work at the New School of Psychotherapy and Counseling at the Existential Academy in London, both of which I have co-founded with my husband, Professor Digby Tantam.
That's totally great. That's totally great. Before I ask my other question, I just wanted to congratulate you on your 70th birthday.
Oh, thank you very much. That's kind.
No, it's late, but I wanted to tell you. I commented on your YouTube channel, but I wanted to tell you face to face. How did you find yourself, um, coming in this way, in this existential philosophy, existential psychotherapy? How did it happen? Can
Well,
you tell us a little bit
it
about it?
happened really quite early on, I think, as I grew up in the Netherlands, just post Second World War, when the country was really in still very bad way after having been occupied by the Nazis for 4 years, nearly 5 years, and the country was very hungry and had been depleted of all of its resources. So when I came into the world, I came into a world which was under a lot of stress and a lot of strain. And it was very obvious to me that there were lots of questions about why things like that happened in the world and what we could do about it. So from very early on, I had a sort of political awakening and a spiritual awakening about wanting to play some sort of part in changing the world for the better. And very gradually, it became clear to me that the best way of doing that would be to work with people with their difficulties and help them make changes for themselves that would transform their lives in a way that would make them feel their life was more worthwhile and had more meaning, and that they were doing something with their lives that they wanted to be doing, and that it was, generally speaking, for the best of the world for all of us. So that's how I got into it. When I went to France at the age of 18, I studied philosophy first. I did a bachelor's degree in philosophy, then a master's degree in philosophy. And then I started working in psychiatry. In those days in France, in the early 70s, they still accepted a philosophy degree as equivalent to a psychology degree, because philosophy and psychology had been one discipline in France. But then very quickly I realized I had to go back to university to get psychology degrees. And I did a first degree in psychology and a master's degree in psychology, and then did my
You
training
went it all
in
again,
clinical
right?
psychology. Yeah.
That must be hard, but I know that because you found the meaning of your working, I think that was kind of a pleasant path for you. I think it was interesting, because when you were describing your background and when you're describing your um, kind of um, your mindset to me, it was kind of like a existential therapy itself, basic. It was like a basic existential therapy, and it was funny because even before you got to that kind of field, you were you were kind of familiar with this, and
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's right. And certainly it was clear to me that I wanted to do therapy in a philosophical way. And of course, in those days, there was no such therapy. The therapy I was trained in was Lacanian psychoanalytic psychotherapy in France. And nobody was doing philosophical types of therapy. But I began doing that, just experimenting for myself. And then I went to the United Kingdom because I thought there were people in the United Kingdom, Ardalan and people like this, who were working in that way. And so I moved to London, and I lived in a therapeutic community for a year, and I worked with these people. And they did have that interest in having a dialogue with people rather than giving them medication. And they did seek to transform psychotherapy in a sort of revolutionary way. but I didn't agree with the way they were going about that, and particularly because they were going more and more towards Lacanian psychotherapy, which I had escaped from in France. So I
It did
then
not
had
focus
to
on life,
create my
right?
own way of working, really, which I did. And I was lucky to get involved with an American university, Antioch University, and I taught for them for a bit. And then I created a master's program for them. So I had this vehicle through which I could teach what I was developing. And then I began writing about it and teaching it to people. And basically it became a movement, and we created the Society for Existential Analysis, and then I created the new School of Psychotherapy and Counseling,
Exactly.
where the entire focus has been from the start on this existential way of working. And then also, it became obvious to me that we needed to align and connect with people elsewhere in the world who had gone through a similar process of establishing this existential way of working. And so we had the first International World Congress for Existential Therapy in London in 2015. And out of that, there have been more and more collaborations across the world with different people doing existential therapy in different ways in different parts of the world.
And as I know, as soon as you were announced as founder of Britannian School of Existential Therapy, which was kind of one of the great waves and great, I don't know, great. What's the start of the new generation of existential therapy?
Yeah.
To say, because before that, my depends on my if I my memory served me well. Before you came, um, American School in Psychotherapy of Existential was only trying to educate people on the theories. And I compared your
Interesting.
I compared your book with the other books in American School of Existential Therapy. They were trying to only focus on the basics and the
Yeah.
theories. But you
Yes, well, there
came,
was that very important book, Existence, in the 50s, where people like Rollo May and
yeah,
Ellenberger
I've read
and
it, yeah.
Angel spoke about what Boss and Binswanger had done. And so there were all these discussions about how that work could be done. But I don't think anybody was really systematically applying those ideas to
Exactly,
practice. And that is
exactly.
what I've always done in my own work, applying it, and out of that, drawing the principles rather than the other way around. So it is a very pragmatic, applied form of work, yes. And
It
many
is really
people
obvious
have,
in your works and your books that you're trusted your audience that they know existential therapy well enough to uh, to read about its practical part and how they do it in a therapy.
yes. So what is fascinating when I have traveled around the world lecturing on this is that I have linked up with so many different groups of people who are practicing existential therapy within their culture and with the background they come to it, and with the kinds of clients that have different issues in their countries. I think we may have lost you there, Ardalan. You seem to have frozen. Can you still hear me? Ah, I think we may have a problem here. I don't know if you can still hear me. No, I think we need to end it there and maybe start